What's happening, everybody, and welcome back to the Chaplaincy on the Go podcast. My name's Josh Zorhoff, and I'm a teaching pastor and a therapist in the West Michigan area. And this podcast is a podcast about emotional health and how it interacts with everyday life in the workspace and at home and in our lives. And it's brought to you by the Fearless Chaplaincy and my good friends at Care Portal. Care Portal is a technology platform that helps individuals who are at risk of entering into the foster care system to get the help that they need, the support that they need. It works with local churches and individuals in different areas to seamlessly provide needs that would otherwise inhibit the quality of life of an individual. And so we're thankful for our partnership with Care Portal, and we're thankful for this conversation that they are helping us to bring to you. I want to talk today about something that I have the privilege of talking about with caregivers and care workers, whether that is people who work as counselors or pastors or nurses or doctors or any individual who works in the realm of giving care to another person. I have this conversation with teachers and with individuals who work within the school system as well. And I'm going to start this conversation by asking a question. If you're a caregiver, if you're someone who helps other people in their life, this question might stagger you a little bit. And often I get a pretty strong answer to this question when I ask it in a large group of people who work in care needs. And here's the question: who helps the helper? Who helps the helper? If you are a parent and you provide the primary care for your family and you're the one who is always helping the kids with their homework, you're helping to prepare the meals, you're helping to clean the house, you're the one who is doing the lion's share of the work in the home, and you feel like you are the helper for your family, typically your response is no one. If you are a helper at your work, if you care for people day in and day out, whether that is as a nurse taking care of people who are sick, or as a counselor taking care of people who are hurting emotionally, or as a teacher taking care of children and helping them learn, typically when I ask the question, hey, who helps the helper? The answer is no one. Being a helper can feel pretty lonely. And it can feel pretty debilitating. In fact, sometimes being a helper, you feel kind of helpless when it comes to who's going to take care of me, who's going to help me. I'm so busy taking care of everybody else that I typically don't even get a chance to think about how I'm going to get the help that I need. And that's why it can be really hard. I was meeting with someone a few years ago who essentially spends their entire life taking care of other people. That's their job. And then they also feel like they need to take care of their family, and they have aging parents. And so they were thinking through, how do I take care of my parents, and how do I take care of my kids, and how do I take care of my spouse, and how do I take care of the people that I'm supposed to be available to and help them walk through their needs. And after a while, my friend started describing to me this overwhelming sense that even though they cared so much about the people in their life, they were starting to feel like they didn't care what was going to happen to them, and they couldn't access the compassion and the passion for caring for their loved ones and the people that they worked with the same way they used to. In fact, it almost felt like there was something in their body working against them. And there's a term for that, incidentally. That term is called compassion fatigue. There reaches a point where even though we care so much for people, if we care over and over and over beyond our capacity, our body and our emotion will actually start to basically revolt against us, and we will feel like we don't care when we know we should. And then all of a sudden guilt comes in and we think that we're bad people, or we think that we've done something wrong, or maybe we start to feel this sense of shame that somehow we're broken in some way because we just don't care the same way we used to. And that's not bad. That's actually a reality. Compassion fatigue is a byproduct of caring for people for too long beyond our capacity or beyond what is healthy for us without ever really taking a chance to refuel or refill or take some time to practice some self-compassion so that we can not only endure this season of caring that we're in, but also give ourselves the dignity that we deserve. And when I ask the question, who helps the helper? And sadly, most helping professionals say no one. That's actually super common. Many people who help others day in and day out feel like if they stop for a second to care for themselves, then that means that they're not going to have what they need to care for somebody else. And they walk around and walk away from that moment feeling really frustrated that nobody else sees them or takes care of them. And that's really hard. And so I want to share with you a process that I take friends, clients, caregivers through to help them work through and think through combating things like compassion fatigue and help them think through how they can be the healthiest possible version of themselves as they take time to care for others. This process that I want to walk you through is it's an illustration that I have used multiple times with nurses and teachers and counselors and social workers and pastors to help them think through ways that they can practice some self-compassion and to care for themselves. And I'm going to use a specific analogy with you to tell you just a little story about this. My wife, she a few years ago bought these hand towels, these dish towels for our kitchen. They were expensive, and they were expensive because they were designed in a certain way. I think they're called like geometry towels, but they were designed in a certain way. The fabric is woven in a certain way where it's supposed to be more absorbent, and it's supposed to do a better job at soaking up messes in the kitchen and water in the kitchen and drying dishes. It's just a better soaking towel, and that's why it's so expensive. And I was thinking about that as she shared with me why she bought these and the purpose behind them. And this idea came into my mind that being a helping professional is a lot like soaking up a mess in a kitchen. For those of you who are listening and you have children, do you remember the age and stage of life when your children wanted to get their own cereal out and pour it into a bowl and then pour them their own milk on their own cereal? I remember that with my son. He was 3, maybe 4. Right around that time, he started to want to do things by himself. And so when he wanted to make a bowl of cereal, of course, we had to help him, but we would get the cereal out for him, and then he would take the box or the bag and he would pour the cereal into the bowl, and of course some would spill out, but for the most part he was able to get the cereal into the bowl. The challenge wasn't necessarily the cereal in the bowl. The challenge actually became the milk that he wanted to pour into the bowl. And he took this bowl and he took this gallon of milk and he put the bowl on the floor, and then he put the milk into the bowl, and some of it got in and some of it just spilled all out on the floor. And of course I was just watching, not angry, I was in a good space emotionally. I thought it was funny, but I'm like, dang, now we got to clean up this milk. And so here's the process that I need to go through, and I'm going to I'm going to have you walk through the process with me when there is spilt milk on the floor. What is the first thing that we need to do when there is spilt milk on the floor or anything that's spilled on the floor? And the answer is we have to soak it up. We take the towel. If we care for the environment, we're not going to use paper towel. We're going to use that nice soaking towel that we have. We're going to soak up that mess. And then what's the next thing that we need to do? Well, we need to wring it out in the sink, because it wouldn't make any sense whatsoever to soak it up and let it sit. That would be silly. Or to soak it up and then wring it out on the floor a couple inches away from where it had spilled. No, you want to take it to the sink and you want to wring it out so it will go down the drain in the proper place. That's where that mess is supposed to go. And then after that, we probably should rinse that towel out, because if we rinse it out and it's rinsed through, we could probably let it dry and use that a couple more times. And then after a couple of spills, after a couple of times of using it, what's the next step for us? Well, we have to have it washed, because you and I both know that even the best towels in the world tend to get a little funky after they've sat and they've been through a few uses, and bacteria build up. And so you need to wash it, because if you don't, you're going to use that towel and you're actually going to spread bacteria all over a surface that you're trying to clean. So it's going to defeat the purpose of actually having a towel to clean in the first place if it is not, in fact, a clean towel. So you got to wash it. And then every once in a while, even if you have washed it thoroughly, towels have to be sanitized. They have to go through hot water. You have to use special detergent. You have to make sure that they're clean, because even the best washing won't necessarily get rid of all of the bacteria. And if you want to have a towel that can be used for the long haul, you really do have to go through that process. Soak, wring out, rinse, wash, and then finally sanitize, because you want that towel to be able to do what it's supposed to do. And we all know that there's going to be more messes to clean up later. I have found over the course of my work as a pastor and my work as a therapist that caring for others and being a helper, well, we kind of have to follow the same process. Helping professionals, people who help others, helpers are soakers. And the truth is, we're built that way. If you are a teacher, if you are a nurse, if you are someone who cares for other people by nature, when there's a mess, you lean in. When there's a struggle, you want to be a part of the solution. When someone is hurting, you want to be available to them. That's who you are. You can't change that. And so if you are a helper, guess what? You are a professional soaker, or a super soaker, not the squirt gun, but you're more like that geometry towel that my wife bought. You are an upgrade to normal towels. You have to embrace that. And when there's a mess, you can expect that you're probably going to lean in and you're probably going to do some work to soak it up. That is normal. But here's where the challenge comes in. You can only soak so much beyond your capacity. After you've reached your capacity, you will start to see a decrease in your ability to soak, and you will start to feel ineffective. And here's the real danger. If you don't have a process to walk through after you have soaked up to capacity, you are going to leak out in places that you don't want. Just like you wouldn't want to soak up a mess and then let that mess sit in a towel on top of the stove or the kitchen cabinet or the countertop or the couch or someplace else in the house. You do not want to soak up the pain of somebody else and just sit with it. You've got to do something with it. And if you don't do something with it, it's going to leak out into the places of your life that you don't want. I had this a few years ago. I had a really tough season in ministry and a really tough season in therapy. And I had some extreme behaviors that I was working through and some clients who were working through a lot of significant pain. And I started acting mean when I was at home. For me, actually, I know when I am at my capacity, when I'm sitting at the dinner table with my family and I start drifting off and I kind of go to my happy place and I drown out the world and I'm kind of stuck in my own head and people are talking to me. I'm not even responding. The word for that is dissociate. I kind of just break away from reality. And when I do that, it's an indication that the pain that I've been carrying is too much and it's starting to impact me. And if I do that for too long, I actually start to get pretty mean. I can get short with my wife. I can get crabby with my son. I can lash out at church or in meetings. I can attack people with my words, or I can get really, really amped up emotionally. And I say things and I do things that I don't want. And here's the deal. If you know someone in your life who's gone through a lot of pain and they're leaking, it's usually pretty evident. It's usually pretty toxic. I get pretty cynical. Those are all indications that I have soaked up too much and I haven't done anything with it. And so all of that pain, all of that stuff is starting to leak out into the places of my life or the relationships in my life that are really significant for me. And usually the people that we love the most are the primary casualties of our poor management of the situation that we're going through and the pain that we've soaked up. So you have to know that once you soak, you need to have a place to wring out. And the wringing out with a dish towel is the sink, because it's going to go down the drain and it's going to get flushed away. And if you are a helper, you have to have a place, a space, and people with whom you can wring out as well. For me, I have a counselor. I have a therapist. I see him every other week as much as possible. I stick to that routine. In the summers, I take the summer off, partly because our schedules are wonky, but I have other things that I do to wring out, like journaling and like prayer. And I also have some trusted friends that I confess to and I talk with, people who are not affiliated with the organization that I work for. Some of my friends are in fact therapists, and they are people that I trust who will hold the confidence of the conversation that I have. But I have people that I can go to who I know will keep safe the things that I tell them, because we all have to have someone or a place to go to with our pain. There's just a couple of things on that. Typically, if you're in a helping professional role where you're a teacher or you're a therapist, confidentiality is really important. It is to me too. And sometimes we think because we are entrusted with confidentiality, that means that we just have to keep the secrets all to ourselves, which there is truth to that. You can't go out and just tell everybody everything that was said to you in a session or said to you in secrecy or said to you in private. That's one of the things that makes helpers a helper, but it's also one of the dangers is that we start to think that we can't say anything to anyone about what we've encountered or what's happened to us. And there are ways to do that safely, and there are ways to do that without breaching confidence or telling people that you're talking to the names of your clients. You don't want to do that, but you do need to have a place and a space and a person that you can confide in. Whether that is a trusted friend, another counselor, someone that you can talk with on a regular basis to download and wring out some of that pain or some of that struggle that you are working through, because you can't carry it all on your own. You don't want to be somebody who leaks out all over the place. You need to have a place to wring out, and you need to have a place to rinse. You need to be able to take a step away from soaking, and you need to basically rinse off and sit for a bit while you dry so you can be effective for the next run. Sometimes for care workers, this comes in the form of self-compassion and planning some time away that's just for you. And I can tell you, over the years, this has been one of the most challenging conversations to have with a care worker, a caregiver, a teacher, a nurse, a counselor, a pastor. We don't take time for ourselves. And it is one of the worst decisions we can make as people who help people. And if you know yourself well enough, you also know when I say you should take time for you, your first thought will probably be, but I don't have time for me. I'm too busy taking time for everybody else. And that's a dangerous perspective to hold. It is critical for you to take time for you. You have to set aside time to get away from it all, to have some time with zero responsibility where you're not in charge. And I know that that sounds hard, but here's usually what I tell clients. If you struggle to take time for yourself, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of somebody in your life who is also a helper, maybe a friend or a family member or somebody you work with, and they're really good at helping people. And they give so much time and energy to caring for people in their life, and they don't take time for themselves. Do you have a person like that in your life? Someone you know who does that? Okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to plan a day away for them. Take the time to write down what 8 hours of self-compassion and self-care would look like for them. So maybe schedule a breakfast with a friend for them in the morning, and then maybe a day of doing a hobby that they enjoy, or maybe going for a drive, or maybe a walk in the woods. If they like shopping, maybe some time shopping. Schedule a lunch with another friend, and then maybe find a place where they can sit in quiet for 2 or 3 hours and read a book or take a nap. And then maybe schedule a dinner with someone that they love, maybe their spouse or someone else, where they actually just have a whole day that is filled with the things that they love to do. Do you know someone in your life who is a helper, and can you plan a whole day filled with things that they would love to do? Because here's what I can tell you. Most of the time, people who help people are not good at planning a day for themselves, but they're really good at planning a day for somebody else. So this is the trick. Plan the day for them and then duplicate it. Give them the plan for them, and take a duplicate copy for you and do the things that you would ask them to do for themselves. That's how you hack yourself into planning a day of self-care. Plan self-care for another helper and do the plan that you planned for them. But take time to rinse. And then after you've done that, over and over, taken some time for self-care, you've rinsed out and you've soaked, and you've wringed out and you've rinsed out and you've soaked. You need to, at a minimum, once a quarter, wash and sanitize. You've got to take an extended period away. A few months ago, I was talking with a woman who is a caregiver, and last year was kind of hellish for her. She experienced a significant loss, and it had been a really challenging season, and she was really tired. And I actually met her at a retreat that I was leading, and she took a couple of days to come to this retreat and do some work to care for herself. And then what she told me afterwards, which I just thought was an incredible move of brilliance on her part. She said, I've decided after this retreat, I'm actually going to stay at this place for a few more days. And I'm just going to be here by myself when everybody has gone. And I'm going to take some time to be in quiet. And I'm going to take some time to be in silence. I'm going to take some time to focus on me without the pressure of other people around. And I thought that is brilliant. And that's exactly what sanitizing looks like. This is the advice and the coaching that I give to pastors, that I give to counselors, that I give to caregivers, nurses, teachers even. You must take some time for you, time in silence, time in solitude, time where you can sit long enough to be bored and then sit a little bit longer. Dallas Willard says that a muddied pool cannot become clear until we stop stirring the waters. I love that quote. And I love the reality that sometimes the chaos in our mind and all of the things that we're thinking about and taking care of, they cannot become clear and settled until we take some time to sit and stop thinking and stop stirring and stop working. And that's exactly why time in quiet, time alone, time for just you with no agenda is so critical. And here's what I want to tell you. If you are, in fact, in a season of exhaustion, especially if you're caring for someone who is sick or hurting, or they've just been in a long season of pain and there's not a lot you can do to make it better and you're tired, you have to find a place to wring out. You have to talk to somebody. You have to go to a therapist. You have to rinse. You have to do some self-compassion, self-care practices. You have to wash. You have to get away, and you have to sanitize. You have to have time in silence and solitude. You need to do these things so that you will survive. A person I know really well, she works with educators. Her name's Becca. She says that self-care is strategic. It is. We can practice self-care and self-compassion because we know we'll be better caregivers for it. But why do we have to put like an agenda on our self-care? Like, I'll only take care of myself because I know it will make me a better caregiver later on down the road. Self-compassion is important because you're important. If you're a caregiver, a care worker, if you're tired, if you're hurting, if you're overwhelmed, if you've been soaking too much and you haven't been doing much with it and you're just feeling it, it is okay to practice self-compassion because you are worth it and you matter. You matter to God. You matter to you. And because you matter, your self-care matters too. That's one of the best reasons to do it. I matter and I'm going to take care of myself. And it's okay to say that. It's not selfish. It's not bad. It's just honest. And so learning how to wring out, learning how to rinse, learning how to wash, learning how to sanitize your own soul is critical in this because you're an important person and you matter. And you don't have to have any other reason beyond that. But the byproduct it will also make you a better helper down the road. And so it's a win-win. You take care of you, and by taking care of you, you can also take care of the people in your life. So take time to practice some self-care. Take time to practice some self-compassion. We're going to have a little worksheet on this attached to the podcast notes. And if you've got questions on ways that you can care for yourself, I'm going to put some links to some really great books that help us practice self-care. I'll put those in the podcast notes as well. And if you want to interact with this or you want to talk a little more about self-care or self-compassion, you can send us an email to chaplaincy@fearlessfollower.org, or you can go to our website, fearlesschaplaincy.org. We'd love to connect with you, love to give you some more hacks and helpful hints of ways that you can practice self-care. And we're going to continue on in this conversation of emotional health in the workspace and everyday life as we go through the podcast. So we're excited to talk with you down the road, but we will talk to you later.